everyone, my name is Daniel, an indie game dev and artist working on a shoot 'em up roguelike game called Soar. And in this video I'm going to show you how you can create stylish and good looking 2D characters or creatures. I'm going to cover the 5 simple steps all of my 2D characters go through, at least the outline ones. These are the sketch, the line art, the flat colors, lighting and details. In the case of characters without outlines, the second step is just omitted and you begin with the flat colors right after the sketch. I put timestamps in the description so you can easily skip the chapter about line art if you don't need to watch it. Let's talk about the tools you need for this first, so you know what you can use for character art. First of all, you need some kind of software or app. This can be Adobe Photoshop, which I use, GIMP, Krita, Procreate or any drawing app on your phone. It doesn't really matter what program you use, but there should be a way of having different brushes, erasing layers, changing the opacity and in the best case, clipping masks. We also need to talk about the device you're using. In the case of a phone or iPad, there's already a screen where you can easily use your finger or pen, like the Apple Pencil, to draw. But if you're using a computer, there's usually no touchscreen and drawing with a mouse is impossible for some people. The good news is there are drawing tablets, the bad news is they can cost a hell lot of money. If a drawing tablet without a screen and with a small surface is enough for you, it can cost $30. If you need a big one with a screen, as I have, it can cost $500 or even more. Besides these two must-haves, I also use downloaded brushes beside the basic Photoshop ones. For the watercolorish texture, I use the free high-res watercolor Photoshop brushes, which you can also use in other software. And I got the Rusty Nib brush pack by True Grit Texture Supply. The last one cost $19 and is available for most popular drawing software. From my experience, and I've been using it for around a year, the price of it is really worth it. Before we can actually start drawing now, we need to prepare a few things. One of them is setting up the canvas. I went with a simple 1600 by 900 pixels canvas, which is pretty high res, but still not too big and heavy in terms of file size. Then I just cropped it for a ratio that looks a little better when I post this artwork on Instagram, and I filled the background with a color that's a lot more calming to the eyes than white. After these simple and quick steps, I also wrote down a few ideas for character themes, and just after that I decided to go with the robot or mechanical theme. Let's begin drawing now, or even more precisely, let's start sketching. The sketch is just so crucial. You can try completely different designs without wasting much time or fiddling around with some proportions. The cool thing about a sketch is just that you don't waste much time or effort if something doesn't look good, because the sketch doesn't need details, color, shadows or clean line art. It can be super rough. It doesn't matter if it looks super messy, because in the end no one will see the actual sketch. As long as you understand the sketch and as long as the proportions and design are good, you have done everything correct. By the way, I made a pretty big and complex character, but these methods in this video also work for small and simple ones. The next step is line art, at least if you're making an outlined character. If you don't, as said before, I put timestamps in the description so you can easily skip to the next chapter. But now let's begin inking. For this step I used a slightly gritty and rough brush for this extra texture and natural feel. I really like when my digital art takes inspiration from the look of traditional art. That's also why I used watercolor brushes later in the coloring phase. Back to the line work, however, I began to trace the important elements of the sketch. I made sure to make everything clean and dynamic by drawing fast lines. This takes a lot of tries to get a perfect line, so having an undo function helps us artists by a ton. Besides that, you can also play with line thickness, making less important elements thinner than the ones that build the main shape. I usually make the outer lines a lot thicker than the ones inside of the character. Once you're happy with your line work, you can add colors. First of all, I made a video all about color last week, so if you feel like you don't know anything about color theory, go and watch that video. But if you already have some knowledge, you create a new folder in case your software allows to, where all of the individual flat color layers are. Each part of the character, like a leg, got its own flat color layer, which makes lighting a lot easier later. Now let's fill in these parts manually. I say manually because I really don't like the bucket tool. It sometimes leaves a few white pixels, especially with the textured brush, and that's just not what we want. My color choice was pretty simple as well. I just took a good looking gold color and a rusty color, and based on these I slowly choose other colors for my character. Next it was time for lighting. I first did the shadows, always choosing a darker shade of the main color of the body part and drawing a simple shadow at the bottom with the brush tool. I do the shadow at the bottom because the light in my artwork came from the top. If it came from the right, I need to draw it on the left and vice versa. You get the idea. In the case of highlights, which I did after the shadows, it's all pretty similar. You choose a lighter tint of the main color of the body part and draw a highlight on top. If the light is coming from the top, you need to place the highlight on the top. If it's coming from the right, the highlight gets drawn on the right, and so on. Simple, isn't it? Now many people would be done with color and moved on to the next step, but there's one thing that is essential in my art style. This is color variation. For this I choose a color that is a little more contrasting to our main tone, but still not a complementary color. In my case, this is a purple that is a little closer to red than blue. Now I take one of the watercolor brushes, scale it pretty small, and then paint with my chosen color. After this, you need to make sure to drop down the opacity of this layer, and then I also added in some blue and red as well for even more variation. Lastly, I choose a yellowish color and then I painted on the brighter areas with that. Now it was my time to repeat that until all parts were done. Of course, taking other colors for the silver parts, for example. One last rule you need to pay attention to is that for dark areas you should use cold colors, and for bright areas you should use warm colors. But based on the setting of the character, this can vary a little. At the end of the day, this little step creates a very unique and stylish way of using colors in an artwork. Details are like the cherry on the cake. It's a small and less noticeable step, but it's necessary to create a really good artwork. So let's start adding details by adding specular dots and next a little shadow beneath the outline to make the character look a little smoother. Because I wanted to post this character later on social media, I also added a simple background, shadows at the feet of the character, and lastly I used the camera raw filter in Photoshop. And that's it with this video. If you enjoyed it, I'd appreciate it so much if you liked and subscribed. I also got a Discord server filled with game developers, artists, as well as people learning to create art. The link to that is in the description, and with that, I hope I will see you next time. Cheers!